Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. This week, the number one selling personal finance author of all time, Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, returns to the show, revealing that he's in debt to the tune of $1.2 billion with a B, why he believes a depression is coming, and he strongly espouses financial education today on Get Rich Education. You know Mid-South Homebuyers, that top Memphis turnkey provider. I learned that a secret weapon behind their explosive growth is more than just you buying their properties. It's an executive coach. For 9 years now, their CEO Terry Kerr and his COO Pat Nix have worked privately with a coach who I've now learned from too, and he doesn't market himself online anywhere. After 12 years behind the scenes, that coach is now making himself available exclusively for GRE listeners. His name is Daniel Thomas Hind. If you're a hard-charging business owner or investor who wants to get in the best shape of your life, physically, mentally, and professionally, you can fill out an application for a free consult. This is private one-on-one coaching for those willing to go to uncommon lengths to achieve uncommon results. Thanks to Daniel, we've all become better leaders, better operators, and better men. It started by showing up for ourselves. Now it's your turn. Go to danielthomashind.com, H-I-N-D, that's danielthomashind.com, and sign up before spots fill. Flock Homes helps multifamily owners exit the operator grind, whether it's your sixplex or a 50-unit apartment, through a 721 exchange. This defers your capital gains tax. It's a strategy long used by institutions. Now you can swap tenants and toilets for passive income and zero management. Request your initial valuation. See if your property qualifies at flockhomes.com/GRE. That's FLOCKhomes.com/GRE.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Williamsport, Pennsylvania to Williams, Arizona, and across 188 nations worldwide. You're inside one of America's longest running and most listened to real estate shows. This is Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and with Father's Day this month, it's apropos to talk about Rich Dad. It's been said that the objective of parenting is to turn a liability into an asset. The book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has now sold over 40 million copies, and it's been translated into 51 languages. One strong thesis in the book, well, there are a few of them. The rich don't work for money, savers are losers, and your house is not an asset. I think any regular listener here to the GRE podcast is already initiated on this. Savers are losers because inflation debases your prosperity. And your house is not an asset because it takes money out of your pocket every month. An asset puts money in your pocket every month instead. And I can see Robert now as he's preparing to take the mic with me here. He's got a blown up visual of his cash flow board game behind him. And then in front of him, he's got a few books, including 2 books that he co-authored with Donald Trump. But this is before Trump was ever a political candidate. So it was before all that, and we're certainly not here to talk politics today. A central theme of the Rich Dad world is that the path for your significant financial betterment is, rather than cutting your expenses, increase your income. This is the root action behind the mantra, don't live below your means, grow your means. But see, living below your means is easier. That's the easy thing to do. It's even myopic. Say, move into a lesser housing situation or cut out going on vacations. Growing your means takes some education, like how to start a business or how to own real estate. See, when you deposit money into a bank, all of a sudden, that bank has a problem. They owe you interest on it. It's an expense for them. So the bank's job is now to lend your money out to somebody else, and make a higher interest rate on it than the lower interest rate that they're paying you on your deposit. All right, well then one direction to focus your education is to start acting like a bank yourself. How do you practically do that? How do you be the bank? Well, just like the bank, you can borrow real estate at a 7% mortgage rate. Now you've got the problem. You've got a monthly mortgage payment you need to make. So you need to beat 7%. How are you going to do that? You better get it right. Well, with tax deductions, you might really be paying 5 to 6%. Meanwhile, the real estate that you've carefully identified and invested in with your borrowed capital can earn multiples more without taking high risk. And actually, that 5 to 6% effective cost of capital that you've got is zero, because that monthly payment is all outsourced to your tenants anyway. And what made all this possible for you? Debt made it possible, and now you're acting like the bank. And banks often have the tallest skyscrapers in your city for a reason, because they make money on those spreads all over the place, and now you're doing the same thing. This is an example of growing your means. The bank will hand you $500K to buy a new home or rental property, not for stocks. They won't do that for crypto, not for your 401k, not for a business idea that popped into your head at 3 a.m., only real estate. The same institutions, banks that manage your savings and study every asset class and are very conservative and have armies and armies of analysts, they will only lend you $500,000 for one thing: real estate. For a few years, I was a writer for the Rich Dad Advisors blog when that was a thing. Robert and I were most recently together publicly last year when we both served as faculty members on the terrific Real Estate Guys Investor Summit at Sea in the Caribbean. Let's talk to Robert. I'd like to welcome back to the show for his 5th appearance here on the GRE podcast. Well, just the number one selling personal finance author of all time. He wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad in 1997 and has ruled the rich dad world ever since. It's a warm Get Rich education. Welcome back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Thank you, Keith. Nobody's more surprised about the success of Rich Dad Poor Dad than me.
Yeah.
Because it was turned down by every publisher in New York. This was like Simon & Schuster and all these guys. And they said, "Why are you turning it down?" They said, "You don't know what you're talking about." It was consensus about the 5 editors of different book companies was, what you're saying doesn't make sense. That's how strange it was back in 1997. And now it's the number one in the world.
This is often how it is when something strikes someone differently, like the Star Wars movies had difficulty getting traction because it was so unusual. And fortunately, Robert, today the consensus among readers has seemed that, oh my gosh, Rich Dad Poor Dad changed my thinking more than anything else. The contrarian thinker.
Sorry, Rich Dad Poor Dad. My poor dad was an academic, PhD.
Yeah.
So he'd be the kind of guy that says your book makes no sense. Whereas my rich dad never went to school because his father died when he was 13 and he had to take over the family business. So much of a young person's life is predicated upon their parents, or the family, or the culture you come from. And I've been studying more of that. Like, let's say I was raised in Alabama, I'd have a Southern accent.
Yeah.
But because of the environment, impresses it upon you. And it's the same as money. If a child is born into a poor family, or in my case, an academic family, then the value system's all different. My family, and it's still true today, got to go to school, get a job, and get a pension with the government. That's their whole belief system. And they're so proud of, this is my brothers and my uncles and all that. They're so proud when their child has what's called a GS, and a government service pension. That's their whole idea on finance. Get that pension, job security.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. But a lot of times we can't hear something because of what's been compressed into us by our culture, our family. So my poor dad was always, you have to get your PhD. I said, for what? Got to get a PhD. So my brothers and sisters, their kids are all getting their PhDs. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, when your poor dad tells you you need to get your PhD and you're asking for what, maybe the answer was for him. So our parents, yes, they're often our first teachers.
It's just values, very different values. And the more I kind of studied, I don't think I'm a good student of it, but there's this thing called a paradigm matrix. And a paradigm matrix is what it's like a cookie cutter. So like father, like son, like mother, like daughter. So much of our lives are transferred by our parents and our schools and things like this. And so that's why Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for some people, it works. But when it first came out, 1997, as I said, it was strange. I said, the savers were losers. And today everybody knows inflation is going through the roof. I said, your house is not an asset. I got hammered for that one.
Right.
And I said, rich don't work for money. Those are my 3 Rich Dad rules. Rich don't work for money. Savers are losers. And your house is not an asset. I built Rich Dad, Poor Dad around those 3 rules. I didn't follow them. My poor dad, those were his guiding lights. You have to have job security and you have to have a government pension. And my house is my biggest asset. And so you can't hear the person because you already have that paradigm matrix or that cookie cutter inside of you. This is my value system. In my family, if I didn't get my PhD, I was stupid. I never got one, but anyway,
Just because you believe something for a long time doesn't make it true.
Correct. And what's happening, because I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I could see this economic times coming. 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And I knew at that time we were going to have hyperinflation. So that it hasn't hit us quite yet. 1971 was August 15th. Nixon's taking the dollar off the gold standard. And you watch what's going to happen in the next few years. We're going to have hyperinflation that we've never seen before. And it's going to make the poor and middle class poorer. The rich will get richer, but poor and middle class will get poorer, tragically.
That is such an appropriate time to bring this up, Robert, because a lot of people are drawing parallels between the 1970s 2 waves of inflation during that decade and what's going on today. I mean, there is so much fuel now that could ignite higher inflation. You've got the cumulative effects of the Iran war and the energy shocks and bottled up supply chains. And Robert, I don't know if you've heard it yet, but you and I's mutual friend, Dr. Chris Martenson, Peak Prosperity there. Chris Martenson, he recently said that he would not be surprised to see 18 to 20% annual inflation in the next 2 to 3 years. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, but it's good for those who have assets.
Right.
You see, when things inflate, like chickens and eggs and milk go up, but so do assets go up, most of them. Like gold and silver will go up, but the purchasing of the dollar will come down. Inflation is a tax. That's all it is.
So much potential for inflation there. And a lot of this really ties in with debt, about how debtors can be enriched. Inflation, I think about the Cantillon effect, meaning that in inflationary times, those closest to the money printer win. And that usually tends to be governments, large banks, corporations with easy credit scores. But a lot of people don't realize that we can benefit from that too as everyday investors that use leverage, prudent debt.
Right. Cantillon effect is basically what interest rate can you get, how easy is money for you. And I use debt. I'm $1.2 billion in debt. And that scares the crap out of most people. But I use debt to get rich. And most people use debt to get poor. And again, that's family, what your education says. So a lot has to do with early childhood development and all that stuff. The more I study it, it really goes back to before a child was like 15. The cookie cutter has been cut.
Yes, it goes back to not always having to believe everything that you think.
We all have access to education. I have my cash flow game here. I teach people how to use debt. And Dave Ramsey says, don't use debt. Well, he's a smart man too, Dave. I like him a lot. And most people should listen to Dave Ramsey. But if you're going to use debt, you'd better take some education. So to go $1.2 billion in debt, man, you better know something. People aren't living paycheck to paycheck. They're living credit card to credit card now and getting wiped out. I hate to laugh, but it's so obvious. You go, because they have no financial education. And that's why my book was turned down by all those academics in New York City, the publishers. So you don't know what you're talking about. I said, how can I say your house is not an asset? How can I say savers are losers? How can I say the rich don't work for money? And that's what I built Rich Dad Poor Dad on. And now it's been an international bestseller, #1 in the world for like 25 years.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that you bring up Dave Ramsey here, Robert. He often gets his followers to make a debt-free scream when they're debt-free. And you know what I think, Robert? For those that scream that they're debt-free, what they're doing is they're postponing screaming that they're job-free or job optional. They could have been prudently leveraging dollars for profit instead, like you and I do.
Well, let me just say, Dave Ramsey's advice is good for most people. I'm saying if you're going to learn to use debt, if all you want is a job and a pension, you don't have to study that much. The biggest mistake I think ever made was that 401k. It's going to wipe out the boomer generation. It's going to decimate us. I wrote this book here, Who Stole My Pension? And that's what it's going to nail the boomers. They're finished because their pensions are going to get stolen. Their 401ks, IRAs, they're finished. But do they listen? No, they send their kids to school to get their MBA and get a 401k.
Well, I kind of think when you have education around debt, you sort of understand this difference between productive debt and what I'll call ego debt. So can you talk to us more about what kinds of debt make people rich today and what kinds of debt can quietly destroy them?
Well, it should be Rich Dad Poor Dad, really. I'm serious. That's all it's about, really, is I use debt to get rich. And Dave Ramsey's advice is good for those who don't want to study. So if you're a PhD in microbiology and you're a doctor, Dave Ramsey's advice is good for you because you have no financial education. It's not between your right ear and your left ear. So I had to study debt. That's the difference. It's what we study.
And for those that are uninitiated on this, what we're talking about here is if you've got, say, $200K to invest in real estate, and real estate's going to go up 5% a year, okay, if you pay all cash, you only have a 5% gain on your $200K. But if you get an $800K loan and now you invest in $1 million worth of real estate, you have that entire $1 million going up 5%, not just $200K, and you have the tenants servicing the $800K in debt for you. This is really the path to wealth through debt, which is counterintuitive.
You don't just get into debt. I mean, you've really got to understand debt. And real estate doesn't always go up. It's about to crash again. And I like crashes. Don't get me wrong. I love crashes because a crash in a stock market, bond market, real estate market is something going on sale. So like if Walmart had a sale, every poor person would run in there. But when the real estate market has a sale, all the poor people run away. I like crashes. That's when you get rich. One's coming big time, big time.
Well, I want to learn more about that because residential real estate in our lifetimes has only fallen significantly one time. That was in 2008, and circumstances are so different today. Today you have responsible lending and you don't have this oversupply that you had in 2008. So tell us more about a potential real estate crash. That's going to interest a lot of people.
Well, real estate crashes because the currency crashes. It's really the problem with the world today, and this is the whole world, is America is now the biggest debtor nation in world history.
Yeah.
39 trillion or something like that. And Japan is a bunch of idiots. I'm Japanese, so I can say that. They save money. Why would you save money when Japan was the biggest money printer of all times? That'd be like somebody, sticking water in your gas tank. Why would you go and fill up with water? But that's what the Japanese were doing. They're saving money. It makes no sense. I mean, I'm just a different person. I just didn't go to school like my family did. I mean, I have a college education and all that, but I studied different things after school. I studied debt. I studied real estate. And that's the big difference. So I'm $1.2 billion in debt. So in 2008, when the market crashed, I borrowed $30 million and levered it up with $1.2 billion in debt.
Good timing.
You should not do what I do. Right? But I studied it since 1974. It's debt. Just like right now, today, we have oil going up. My college degree is in oil. I'm an oil tanker driver. I drove oil tankers with Standard Oil. I'm making fortunes today as the price of oil goes up. So, the more Netanyahu and Trump bomb Iran, terrible as it is, I'm getting richer. So you don't have to be poor, but you're poor because that gap between your left ear and your right ear is empty. You've been taught inflation's bad. Well, inflation's good if you're holding oil or gold or silver or some real estate. Anyway, most people have no financial education. That's why I created the cash flow board game, so you can have fun learning how to be rich. If you don't want to learn to be rich, then go to school and get your PhD.
Sometimes when people don't understand how real estate debt benefits them, one way I've helped people understand, Robert, is that say you have a loan balance of $112K on a piece of real estate today. That feels really small. It almost feels like something that you can pay off with what you have in your savings account. But if you go back 30 years, when the median home price is $140K, 80% debt on that would have been $112K. So here, 30 years later, with your 30-year fixed rate loan, you still just have that $112K in debt while the median home price is over $400K. And that's even if you hadn't made a principal payment at all. So it's really a way to visualize how inflation starts shrinking the real weight of our debt over time.
My advice is I would study debt. So I take real estate courses. I'm always studying. I'm studying constantly because the markets are changing so quickly. The biggest problem today started in 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So we're the biggest debtor nation in world history. I think we're going into a depression right now. So a depression plus AI coming along is going to wipe out jobs. I'm going to get richer. What are you going to do? So I'm already planning for the future. The people that get rich can see the future. So when you say, well, back in 2008, it only crashed for a little while, then okay, so what? And history has proven in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Every nation has collapsed who did that. The Chinese did it, the Romans did it, the Greeks did it, Germans did it. They print money. And so that's the real issue. It's not debt, but it's also the economic macro problems that keep going into the world. The dollar's coming down. And I'm afraid that we're going into a global depression. I hope I'm wrong. Like Grant Cardone and I have fights all the time about it, because he's a big proponent of that real estate always goes up. It doesn't always go up.
Right.
It doesn't always go up. The stock market doesn't always go up. The bond market's crashing. Everybody says, oh, bonds are safe. The bond market's in the biggest bubble in world history. We're going into a depression. So what are you going to do about it? I'm afraid America's going to crash because we've taken on Iran. And Iran's a powerful, powerful force out there. I'm not in favor of it. But everybody who's messed with Iran's got their ass kicked. So just note that. As just look at history, you can see the future, but you have to be careful in the history you follow. So in 1971, I was on an aircraft carrier in Vietnam, and my rich dad wrote me a letter. I was a Marine helicopter pilot, went down 3 times. And my rich dad wrote me a letter. Says, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, watch out. And immediately I started buying gold. So I started buying gold at $50 an ounce. Today is what, 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah.
The trouble with gold is you pay high taxes on it. You got to understand taxes too. Got a lot to learn, Keith. I study constantly.
You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. What if you got your mortgage loans the same place I get mine? You sure can at Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They've provided GRE listeners with more loans than anyone because Ridge specializes in investment property. They'll help you build a long-term plan for growing your real estate empire with leverage. Start your pre-qual and even chat directly with President Chaley Ridge. While it's on your mind, start at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's ridgelendinggroup.com. Let me ask you something. If you've worked hard to build wealth, is your money positioned to actually support your goals? A lot of accredited investors leave capital sitting in cash because it feels safe, but inflation and missed income opportunities can quietly erode its value. Freedom Family Investments offers Freedom Notes for investors seeking structured income backed by real estate. It's a straightforward approach built on real assets not speculation. And full disclosure, I'm an investor myself. What I like is that their team walks you through how it all works so you can decide if it aligns with your portfolio and income goals. Every investment carries risk and nothing is guaranteed, but with a track record of consistent, on-time investor payouts, they've built real credibility. Go to freedomfamilyinvestments.com to book a clarity call or text FAMILY to 66866. That's FAMILY to 66866.
This is author Jim Rickards. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. We're talking with the top-selling personal finance author of all time, Robert Kiyosaki.
Just study history. History will see this. You'll see the future. So this is my good friend here, Donald. Why don't you get rich? And this is one man, one message.
Robert's holding up a book now.
You've got to get educated on money, but most people won't. So they get a 401k and they live debt-free. Good advice. Will it protect them? No. It won't protect them from, if you lose your job, AI takes it away, or there's a massive crash. But we've never been in this much debt before, Keith. My generation's screwed. Boomers are screwed because we're the first generation with a 401k. That was 1974. In 1974, also, Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia to sign the dollar up backed by oil. And today, my buddy here, Trump, is bombing the crap out of Iran. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but the price of oil is going through the roof. Now, everybody's complaining about it because there's inflation. So chicken and eggs go up in price. Diesel delivers chicken and eggs all over the world. I'm getting richer because I own oil wells. You see, you don't have to be poor, but you better question what they put between your left ear and your right ear. What did mommy and daddy tell you? Go to school, get a job with a government service. My daughter's a GS. She's got a master's from Washington State University. Losers.
This untethering of the dollar from gold in 1971, that meant that there is no sovereign currency in the world today that's still tied to gold, allowing for more money printing and enriching over time debtors like you and I. But Robert, when we think about how debtors are profiting, and you spoke earlier about how oftentimes your parents put all of these values inside you, how do you emotionally tolerate having a lot of debt yourself? You talked about having $1.2 billion in debt. How do you emotionally deal with that?
I study. I take courses. I'm constantly in seminars studying debt. I don't study 401ks or bonds. That's for losers. But this is the biggest point, Keith. You got to find out. My rich dad always said to me, says, there's 1 billion ways to financial heaven. So there's, 8 billion people on planet Earth. And 1 billion of the 8 may make it to financial heaven. But there's 7 billion to financial hell. And the difference is what's between your left ear and your right ear. And that's why you choose what you learn carefully. Cash flow game. Study it. Have fun. Practice. Play. Learn. But if you don't want to learn, then follow Dave Ramsey's advice. That's much better. It's better for you. Really, I'm serious. And to get your PhD and get a 401k and get wiped out when you lose your job. It's up to you.
Yeah, the debt-free mindset probably is better for most people, but I think you shouldn't aspire to want to be like most people. Most people are overweight and they have a busted relationship and they don't have enough money at the end of the month. So we're really not aspiring to be mediocre here. And that can mean taking on prudent debt. You wrote something in a book one time. I don't think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was one of your later books. This is so simple, but I found it to be so profound and life-changing for me. And that is simply being wealthy is a choice.
It depends on what you want. It's your choice. But you better know what your choices are. What did mommy and daddy say to you? But also what are they doing in front of you?
Right.
Were they clinging for job security or were they buying oil wells? Like I own Bitcoin, but they'll recommend it. No. I study it. I don't really understand it that well. I have 49 Bitcoin. Not much. But as inflation goes up, my Bitcoin goes up. I also have Ethereum. And I'm old. I don't understand tech that well, but I buy it to learn it, to practice, to study it. Am I an expert at Bitcoin? No. So I just keep studying. That's all I'm saying. I have a choice how to put between this year and that year. That's your choice today.
Well, that's really interesting, Robert, because some people say that you should only invest in something that you understand well. Others say that you're only going to understand something well if you invest a little in it first and have a stake. Well, is there any last thought that you have, Robert, as we wind up? Anything at all that a listener should know today?
No, I mean, I just said it. That's it. Choose what you put between your left brain and right ear, and what do you do? What do you do in your spare time? I study. You can ask the people around me. I'm constantly studying, because I like to win. I'm very concerned, Keith. We're going into the biggest depression in history. So what happens when you lose your job and you can't put food on the table? That's going to create another problem. So I'm a big pessimist, but I'm ready for it. I have a lot of guns. So I call it the 5 Gs, okay? You have to have gold, food, ground, gasoline, and guns. That's prepared for the future. The 5 Gs would be gold, gas, grub, food, guns.
Well, Robert, you gave us a lot to think about there, including some actionable things. It's been great having you back on the show.
Okay, well, thank you. Keep up the good work.
I believe Robert feels that a coming economic depression would be linked to the longer-term calamity about the dollar being depegged from gold for about 55 years now. His $1.2 billion in debt is largely, if not completely, good debt. You can learn more about Robert and the Rich Dad world at richdad.com. And he and I talked more off air. As much as he stresses financial education, he emphasizes taking action after you've learned. Otherwise, you really haven't gained much of anything. But the rat race is so busy that some people don't have time to care about this stuff. In fact, the difference between financial education and financial courage is action taking. That's the difference. Now, in my view, it seems that some feel like financial betterment means cutting your expenses so much that you reduce your standard of living even over the long term, and doing that for the long term. You might do some of that in the short term, earlier in your investing career, because you need some capital formation. But to me, before long, financial betterment should give you the ability to make your life better. Really, don't buy the boat or RV just because it's a depreciating asset. Well, you don't want to do that wastefully if you can't afford it, but if you can learn how to afford it, consider borrowing for it, investing it at a higher interest rate than the RV loan, and profiting while you enjoy the RV. Some people don't even think something like that is possible. Well, that's the sort of thing financial education can do. Genuine financial betterment means that you can take the trip. It means that you can buy the boat, because what's worse, owning a depreciating asset or living a depreciating life? Big thanks to Robert Kiyosaki today. We've got a lot of great upcoming shows here on the Get Rich Education podcast. Next week, the mad scientist of multifamily, Neil Bawa, will be here. It's going to be a charged conversation on the state and the future of the residential real estate market. Also, I've been compiling my top 12 dirty dozen due diligence questions that are going to help you avoid mistakes when you buy a piece of income property. Like, for example, how do you be sure that a build-to-rent community isn't overbuilt with supply, and why you should always get a property inspection, even on a new construction property. That's coming in future weeks. And if you're a new listener and still learning about how to prudently use debt to build wealth, you're in luck. Just 8 weeks ago on episode 600, it's an episode where it's just me talking to you, called Debt is the American Dream. Be sure to check out that show. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and in the spirit of Rich Dad, don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.